Welcome to another episode of the dOrg Hot Seat. dOrg is a membership-based dev shop or a DAO, and we offer a variety of services, including custom development, finding members for your team, integrating within your team as a sub team, and help you develop anything that you might need on the Web3 space. So, one of the things that we love to have in the dOrg Hot Seat are other DAOs, and learn how they are doing, what are the best practices on how to create DAOs, get informed ourselves, improve ourselves, and getting ideas for mechanism design, which is something that we're really into as well. So today we have Public Nouns representing. We've got Sky with us. Hi, Sky.
Hi, nice to be here.
Absolutely, really nice to have you here. And yeah, Public Nouns. Maybe you should introduce Public Nouns. What is it?
Yeah, it's great that you mentioned mechanism design. So, uh, Public Nouns, it's about 3 years, a little over 3 years ago now. Friends who basically work in the DAO space, in the care about public goods, and deep kind of in the Web3 Ethereum space. We were floating around the DAO world. A lot of us come from the meta cartel world, and we saw what was happening with Nouns, with Nouns DAO, which was this new mechanism that came about. And the cool thing about Nouns DAO was it had this like continuous funding mechanism because they were selling this NFT each day, and so money was coming in, and then as you bought one of those NFTs, you became part of the DAO, and they were doing decentralized governance. And in the beginning, Nouns DAO was just funding the proliferation of Nouns, the actual like brand of it. And so we saw that, and we were like, oh, what if we could take that mechanism, which is a really new, interesting mechanism that has this continuous funding, and apply it to another use case. And that use case that we came up with was funding public goods. And so in the end of 2023, basically, we launched Public Nouns. And so Public Nouns for 3 years has been using decentralized governance, all on chain, to fund wild experiments in the public good space. And the interesting thing about that is that many DAOs, and most of the projects that were doing public goods funding were like Giveth and Gitcoin, and you'd put a project on there and you get a little bit of money each round. Sometimes it's continuous, sometimes it's during a specific QF round, but you would often get like a small amount of money streaming into your project. And Public Nouns, because it got this big treasury very, very soon after launching. People were buying this. People were like the idea. They were buying Public Nouns. They were putting money into the treasury. They were becoming part of the DAO. It was able to do kind of bigger, like not giant grants, but bigger grants, like 3 ETH or 5 ETH, sometimes 10 ETH. So could fund through a grant a new idea, a group of people that had something that they needed at least X amount of money to get off the ground. Maybe they needed $15,000 to like stop doing their jobs for 2 months and start building the thing that they wanted to build, or continue it, or dive in deeper. And so I think for the first couple of years, Public Nouns was able to fill a need in the public good space and support projects that couldn't just like start working with a couple $100 or a few $100 from Giveth or Gitcoin. They could do a proposal to Public Nouns. They could sell what they were envisioning to the DAO. There would be some debate, and then a proposal happens on chain, and it either passes or doesn't pass. And that actual money then moves, which is often a bigger chunk of money, to that team, and then they can set off on doing what they're doing. And so I think for a whole bunch of time, it filled a need that was missing in the space, where projects that like either had to go to some big organization and do a monthly long process to get a certain amount of money to kickstart their idea, versus they could come to Public Nouns. A lot of times most of the proposals that have come to Public Nouns, not all, but most of the ones that are not scams, that are really good ideas, that are public goods, that have a group behind, a good group behind it, they have mostly passed and have gotten funded. And so that's how it's been working for the last 3 years. Yeah, and the nouns mechanism. Yeah, the nouns mechanism grew across lots of different areas, and there were lots of different derivatives and forks. I'd say that Public Nouns, in addition to maybe little nouns and a few other noun derivatives, is one of the more successful and has distributed a large treasury compared to like the Nouns DAO itself. And so it's had a very clear mission from the start. It's been able to execute on that. But yeah, times today are a little bit different, so we could talk about some of the challenges as well if we want to later. But that's Public Nouns in a nutshell. Yep.
Right on. Thank you for that. It seems that it has these two pieces, right? Like it has a very novel continuous funding mechanism. There's a new public noun every 12 hours, I believe. And people can just buy this and then become part of the governance, which is the second piece. By owning one of these nouns, you can also decide or participate in the governance of what this money is going to be used for.
Correct.
All right. Nice.
Correct. And so even though these a public noun theoretically could be sold every 12 hours for forever, basically, that only works, and there has always been a minimum bid on a public noun of 0.33 ETH, which is a little bit different than some other noun derivatives. But that also, from the start, that was always kind of a barrier to entry. So we thought of it as a feature, not a bug. But with that, especially as the market changes and it seems like fewer and fewer people care about maybe funding public goods on their own and things like that, like sales of public nouns don't happen very often anymore. And so that potential continuous funding mechanism can slow down and stop for periods of time, and money does not flow into the DAO because of interest, because of market conditions, and because of other things. And so that hasn't stopped us from giving out grants. And so the current situation is that we've been giving out more money than we've been taking in for the last couple of years. And so the treasury is getting lower, and there's a bit of a slowdown in the DAO.
Right. I'd love to see what sort of ideas do you have in order to revive or to find these continuous funding mechanisms. I'm also interested on the governance piece, though. Technically, like a lot of people could just buy a lot of public nouns and slowly gain a bigger share of the governance, and potentially they could direct grants to themselves. Is that something that you were ever concerned about?
Yeah. So there's usually always some mechanism in place that in the DAOs that exist in the Ethereum world and that have succeeded, there's usually some mechanism that prevents, when it's a true liquid token governance, which just means with capital, with money, you can just buy governance power in a DAO. There's usually some other mechanism that prevents like attackers or malicious people from buying enough governance to take over and control the DAO. And there's lots of different ways to do it. In the case of nouns and public nouns and mini noun derivatives, the mechanism that they put in place, because when they started this in Nouns DAO, they had no idea how it was going to start. They actually created a council, which was the founding people of Nouns DAO, and we have the Panounders, which is the founding council of Public Nouns DAO, which has veto power. So that council can veto a very malicious proposal that tries to attack the DAO. So that even though that's never been used, that power in public nouns, the fact that it exists put something in place where there's less incentive for someone to try to buy enough public nouns to then kind of take the treasury for themselves. So the fact that that exists basically prevents that from happening, because you could still try to do it, and you could argue that it's a spectrum. Like it's like if you say give me all the money, like that's not that could get vetoed. If you say give me 30% of the money to my project, that could be debated on if that's malicious or not. And so there is a spectrum, and there would have to be a decision being made, and the council would try to look after the best interest of the DAO. But in that case, like the good thing is these councils, they could veto proposals. They can't actually do proposals to take the money themselves. So it's just an added protection that would stop like drastic malicious proposals. And so that's been in place. Nouns DAO, the big parent version of this, has had lots of problems over the years with this thing. People were buying nouns to then take their share of the treasury, and even though they couldn't do a proposal to do it, they basically did a social attack, and they caused enough social problems that the DAO had to basically make a deal with the attackers, and Nouns DAO forked now twice, and people have taken money out and things like that. That's happened with Nouns DAO. Nouns DAO is in its own situation. It's got a lot of things that it's doing on its own. Public Nouns DAO has not had to face that type of thing. It's been a different type of community. I'd say that the people that hold public nouns is like an amazing group of people in the Web3 space that care about DAOs, that care about decentralized governance, that care about public goods. And so like that alone is almost like a badge. Like public nouns was almost invented for like something that Vitalik would love. He would love to have a public noun and show that as his badge of honor. He's never bought a public noun. Not sure how much he knows about public nouns, but it was with him in mind, where if you join this community, your public noun and what it stands for and the mission behind it is something that you'd be proud to like have. And that's my PFP. That's like public noun, I think number 14, the first one that I got. And so like I've been using that as my profile pic for years now, and I'm proud to have it represent me and the values of what public noun stands for.
Tell me more about these people and actually the governance process that you guys have in public nouns, or that we can all participate on, I guess, if we buy a public noun. How does this work?
Exactly. So the cool thing is, anyone in the world that you don't need a public noun can come and bring an idea related to public goods to the DAO. So you don't need a public noun to even bring the ideas to public nouns.
Right.
Generally, and we have a Discord, we have a forum and things like that. Generally, historically, over the last 3 years, ideas are brought to the DAO. People give feedback. This is how most DAOs have been working probably in the last number of years, and back in the day, is where by the time the proposal has been shown around the DAO, people have discussed it. There's like a soft, do you think you have enough support? You generally get to the point where there's not really contentious proposal. Like I like to say that DAOs often pass proposals. It's best to pass a proposal in a DAO when like 80 or 90% of the people are kind of on board with that proposal. If like you have 51% of the vote, if you know you could get 51% of the vote, and you try to get that proposal passed through the DAO, and you get it, and you vote 51 to 49 and it passes,
right,
that in my mind is not great, because you still pissed off 49% of the people. And so that's generally not good. Generally, you want the proposal to be excited by, most people to be excited about it. And that, like, when it goes to proposal, it just gets passed pretty easily. The quorum is reached. And so that's generally what's happened in the proposals that have come to the DAO. Sometimes, if it's not that exciting and it still gets put up for proposal, you don't get a lot of participation in the vote. Sometimes it doesn't pass by not reaching quorum. There's been just a few that have been contentious where there's like a lot of people voting on both sides. And so maybe that was brought, or that proposal wasn't proper at the time. But that's generally is, the voting is to like officially move past the proposal and move the money by members of the DAO when that proposal is like, you kind of, you're pretty positive that it's going to probably be supported and passed. So
Right.
that's generally what happens.
It's almost like if there is a low participation, there's a high chance that it's a no. There's like a people, instead of voting no, most people would just like, I'm not gonna vote against it, but also I'm not gonna vote, and then it doesn't reach quorum. That's an
It's
interesting
not.
dynamic.
Yeah, if it's something everyone's excited about or enough people are excited about, that usually is not a problem. But if
Right.
it's a meh proposal, maybe it didn't have enough support as it was. Maybe it got put up too early. Sometimes people have just put a proposal without even showing anyone anything about it, and people could vote on it, and it could theoretically pass. But a lot of times
Chances are.
it's just outside the process, and people aren't excited about it anyway. No one votes on it, and no one votes against it or anything, but it just sits there.
What
So you can do that.
What are the platforms where this happens? You have a forum, and that's where you propose the proposal.
Yeah, that's where initially things started in the Discord. Yeah, and there's channels for bringing new ideas, getting people excited about it, refining them, and then everything's on chain. So, and it's on mainnet Ethereum. It's been on mainnet Ethereum since day one. Your nouns, your PFPs are actually the art, the actual, just like nouns DAO, the art is on chain. So these are not, when there's no servers that can go down and your PFP is disappearing like on OpenSea stuff, but your actual art is on chain. They're dynamic. It was founded by seven. No, it was there's seven founding organizations that that kickstarted, and so what we did is we took noun like head art from the different separate organizations, and there's 3 different versions for each one, and so every public noun currently is one of 21 pieces of head art related from 7 organizations, and those are like the Optimism Possum, the Radical Fern, the Panvala Stampy, the Gitcoin Robot Head, the Metacartel Chili Head, and so the Malik Dao Head. So the art actually, unlike most nouns, like all the other nouns are just like the head is just noun art mostly. This is actually noun art that is customized to like communities that make up our greater community. And so we had ideas like, so you mentioned we had ideas to potentially in the future bring on more organizations that are aligned with public nouns. dOrg is actually one of those organizations. We had some new noun head art for. We have not done this expansion. This would be one idea if we had momentum and enough interest. This could be one way to expand and reinvigorate some of the activity in public nouns. But the tricky thing is right now, even the people that are in public nouns, much less new people that are not in public nouns that know about it, we're to the point where most people aren't willing to put some of their own skin or capital into the system again to continue it. And if that's the case, there's a lot of factors. We're seeing donation fatigue on some of the recent rounds with Giveth and Gitcoin, and even though ETH price is pretty good compared to like where it was 2 years ago, it's lower than where people think it should be, and I think that people are struggling. Giving up your ETH to like causes and stuff is like harder for people right in this current crazy market where there's all these up and downs. And so I think it's going to take a change in market for some of these things to reinvigorate. I think they will, and I think people understand the importance and are excited about them. But to take your own money and give it to certain causes and things that are important in the space, it takes like a leap of faith, and sometimes that slows down. And so I think we're going in cycles.
For sure. Thanks for these ideas. I think this is quite interesting to bring another, maybe other communities into it, might revitalize it for sure.
Yeah.
Though you've
So
done some
one other
wild.
idea, real quick, one other idea
Of
that I've
course.
like run by the current community is like, if we're not getting new people and people care about this mission and are excited about what it's done for the last 3 years, one thing is like, what if everyone that's in the community buys one more public noun, right? So if we can't get that to happen, in my mind, that's a current survey of like
Mm,
who's willing to put money in the game to
mm,
continue the mission or alter the mission or do something. And right now, we don't even have enough interest to like act on something like that. And so
yeah.
if that's not happening from the people that are excited and currently part of it, then getting new people is like a whole nother obstacle. And so there's lots of different
Sure.
ideas we could throw around. We could go on to an L2, we could make the price lower, you could do all these different things. But without the core excitement, it's a little bit, it doesn't make sense to take one of those paths without
Yeah.
knowing that you're going to have some invigoration from the current set of people.
Mm, yeah. You have, though, on the other side done some what is known as wild experiments on public goods funding. Can you give us some examples of
Yeah,
this?
totally. So just to like give high level, Um, the DAO's brought in about 230 ETH in the last 3 years. It's given out grants to like 50 projects of 200 and 20 ETH, 215, 220 ETH, which is like $550,000 to different projects. There's about 155 wallets that hold public nouns, and there's been about 240 or so public nouns that have been purchased. And the question is, where have the grants gone? And so the coolest thing about the DAO is like the variety of where the grants have gone. We funded Web3 education projects, fed the homeless, things like Protocol Guild, Ethereum core development, which was like not that wild of experiment now, but when it was first starting, and they were like, we're going to create protocol, a guild that's going to fund Ethereum core development. Most people are like, what do you mean? What's that? And like Public Nouns was like, oh, we're in, let's do it. Like fund 10 ETH, there you go. Um,
Mm,
Open source software, tools and projects that people are using that were made by coders that devs that like are free to the world for the world to use. Hyper local community public goods. So we have some examples of like very specific location projects. Upe is in Costa Rica, and they're like trying to figure out how to like create a system of information for public goods in their community and make a playbook that any community around the world could use. So that starts very
mm,
hyper local in one town in Costa Rica. They learn it, they do it, they execute it, they have success, and then they make a playbook, and then other towns and people in the world can use it. I think that's really helpful, especially in like lower wealth communities and stuff like that. Um, we've had a big partnership with Giveth over the last um, 3 years. Like we've helped give matching funds to quadratic funding rounds and
mm,
supported a lot of the new things that they've built. So Giveth has built so many new things in the space, and they're all new experiments, new ways of doing curation on public goods, new ways of funding public goods, new things
yeah.
like QAC. And so money is gone towards, even though Giveth is not like, well, I'd say Giveth is a wild experiment in public goods, but like all the new experiments they do are even more. And so we've always supported giving matching funding to all those as well, through 3 rounds, I think. Public infrastructure, some educational art, privacy stuff. So that's the Roman Storm support. That's
Nice.
Shutter, all the voting tech they're doing, which is
Hmm.
super cool. Other things with privacy, uh, hyperactive public goods funding, And then more recently, we've gotten basically more into like regen, earth, environmental public goods. Part of that is like the community. The community's kind of changed a little bit, or like who's active in the community has changed over the last year or so. The regen stuff has become more popular, and more education stuff. And so that's like,
Right.
super wide variety. It's great to like, you can go to Public Nouns dot WTF, and then the DAO, which is /vote, and you can see there's been currently 78 proposals. You can see all the proposals there. You can see defeated, executed. Click on them. You can see the money and the actual summaries and the links out, and so you can get like everything straightforward right there. We've had
the one that you're
some reports
particularly proud
of all the proposals.
Yeah, one that you were like, damn, that one was great. The impact, amazing.
Well, good question. Well, I like personally, I like things like privacy. So all the privacy ones I like. There's not measuring impact. We use karma.gap, where projects like evaluating impact is always an important thing. So you can, a lot of these projects got their first grant from Public Nouns, and I always say like, make sure you give updates and show what you're doing with that, because that's going to help when you come back to Public Nouns for more money, but also when you go to anyone else, any other organization in the space for money, you're going to want to show the impact. So showing evaluation and showing proof of impact is important. We're getting better at tools like that, but it's not easy and it takes effort.
Impact has always been like impact measurement and the tracking is a hard part. And also by funding things at such an early stage, some experiments are bound to fail as well. Maybe something that people were very excited about, and then they didn't work out, but it was worth experimenting with it.
One thing I can add is, and I presented this at some conferences in the past, is if you draw a normal distribution curve, right? Most DAOs, and the way there's like, if a token DAO that has 100,000, like holders and stuff, if the DAO is going to vote, in general, you're always going to get an answer. You're going to get an outcome that is generally in the middle of that distribution curve, right? Because the crazy ideas don't get enough support from the average, right? Like DAOs, if you token vote, you're just going to get an average in general. The way we've solved that at Public Nouns is we don't just want average ideas to pass. And so the DAO itself and its mission and the word wild lives out on the edge of the normal distribution curve. So, because most DAOs can't vote and pass things on the edge, that's just the way they work. If you move the DAO and its mission to live, the entire DAO lives out on the edge, then any ideas that are crazy and wild and risky can have a chance of passing. And so that's what the DAO's been able to do for the last couple of years, which is pretty cool, because there's not a lot of DAOs out there that can pass proposals on the crazy edge of the curve.
For sure. There's one question from Magenta, a dOrg member, that says, has anyone run a local nouns DAO, like, Cincinnati nouns or Manila nouns, that you know
of? In cities, yes. So Austin, which is a big hub of tech and experimentation in the U.S., there's a city DAO that was basically Willy Wonka can you probably have him on here if you haven't, to talk more about it. But they basically nounified an already city DAO of Austin that's actually it's worked with legislation, it's worked with VCs there to basically pass legislation to make like Texas and Austin more favorable to like crypto and Web3 and stuff. um, so they basically nounified their city DAO, ATX DAO it's called. But and there's lots of noun forks. Generally, like Purple, which was a nouns DAO for funding Farcaster experiments. Builder DAO. There generally have been most of the successful noun derivatives have been around themes or like an interest, like a community of interest, rather than like an actual place. But it is possible to do it for a place like ATX DAO did. I'd say that the one thing, like, you can go to nouns.build, which was built by Zora. You can no code spin up your own nouns DAO.
Uh-huh. That
And
was gonna be
yeah,
my next question.
it's really cool. Yeah. But so the key before you do it, because there's many noun like DAOs that have failed because they just didn't have enough interest and they sputtered out or whatever, didn't have enough
Right.
money. So the key before you do it is to basically either have an existing community or know
Mm.
that you're going to have enough of a community to kickstart it with a whole bunch of people that are excited, that are willing to put either their capital, money, time, effort, coding skills into it, basically to get it. You almost need it kickstarted, right? You don't want to do
Right.
this unless you have a certain amount of interest. It's almost like, when they do a bonding curve where you have like the Kickstarter in the beginning. You need to know you're going to have at least X success in the beginning.
Yeah.
Otherwise,
Mhm.
it could easily sputter out. And so many nouns like DAOs have sputtered out because they didn't have that from the beginning. I think there's massive opportunity to do more noun derivatives around themes, around specific missions and all that stuff. But you want to gather that interest before you launch it so that it has a boom at the start. That's my advice.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you very much, Sky, for coming here and showing us the incredible world of public nouns, nouns forks, what it takes to create a noun fork, what the challenges that you find. Um, Public goods funding is something that has been like a huge topic in Ethereum as well. And I think it's because, well, Vitalik being the founder has had a huge interest as well. And we're creating so much new software and open source software that in a way it can be considered public goods. And all of this is free and open source and on this Ethereum world computer that everybody can use without necessarily having to pay, just using these open free smart contracts. So I think it's really interesting to see what are these experiments that we have had to have in order to maintain and reward this openness. And public nouns is not only an experiment itself in public goods, it's a series, it's part of this series of creating this new economy where people just give and they create stuff, open stuff, and then we figure out a way of including them. And it doesn't always work, but we're experimenting. And when we say that blockchains are the basis for a new economy, we're not only talking about like a traditionally capitalistic new economy, but maybe we're also figuring out ways of sharing value that are different and not necessarily so transactional. So thank you for
Yeah.
being one of these, Sky. Thank you for doing this. Are there
Yeah.
any links that you want to share? Any final questions? Where can they find you? If an organization wants to join you and do another push at public nouns, how do they find you?
Yeah. So real quick, if you go to publicnouns.wtf, there is currently public noun 514 on auction. It's a beautiful Moloch DAO head. If you don't have a public noun, now is a great time to get one. It's got these cool pink nouns glasses and a sick wrapper gold medallion on its chest. That's how you can become part of public nouns. if you're part of Public Noun members of Public Nouns has also gotten benefits in the past. We've gotten airdrops from many different projects. Well, not many, like Octin and Gollum and TKN. And so there's benefits of being in the community as well. You can find me or message me at Sky on Farcaster is the best place to do it. The Nouns community, the Public Nouns community is, probably favors Farcaster over Twitter these days. There's a lot of cool stuff happening there. It's still niche, but it's growing. So yeah, make sure you're on Farcaster. And yeah, thanks for having me, Lansky, and the dOrg team. Excited to be on the show.
Excited to see what's going to happen with Public Nouns and public goods funding. Thank you, Scott. Have a great one.
Cool.